The pawn shop owner's voice cracked through my phone like ice breaking on a frozen lake. "Mrs. Whitmore, you need to come down here immediately. What I found inside your husband's watch? It's going to change everything you thought you knew." I stood frozen in my Seattle kitchen, still holding the empty Rolex box I'd just discovered, its velvet lining mocking me with the imprint where Garrett's watch should have been. 8 months since cancer took my husband, and now this. My hand trembled as I gripped the phone tighter. "What do you mean, inside the watch? Who brought it to you?" "Your son was here an hour ago with his wife. Ma'am, your late husband, he prepared for this." Those words would haunt me for weeks to come, but in that moment, all I could think about was Bryson's casual voice from yesterday's phone call. "Mom, stop living in the past. Dad's gone. You need to move forward." Easy for him to say when moving forward apparently meant selling my dead husband's most precious possession for a beach vacation. My name is Marlene Whitmore, and at 71, I thought I'd seen enough betrayal to last a lifetime. My husband Garrett had been gone 8 months, taken by lung cancer that moved faster than our 43 years of memories could hold it back. That Rolex Submariner from 1976 wasn't just a watch. It was the last thing Garrett's father gave him before dying in Vietnam, passed down with shaking hands and a promise to keep time with what matters. Every morning for 4 decades, I'd watched Garrett wind that watch while our coffee brewed, his fingers careful and reverent, like he was handling something sacred. The morning I discovered the theft started like any other day since Garrett died. I was planning to take the watch for servicing, something Garrett did religiously every year on our anniversary. Opening his watch drawer, I expected to find it nestled in its worn leather box, waiting. Instead, I found emptiness and a sticky note in my daughter-in-law Kendra's bubble handwriting. "Borrowed for appraisal." Borrowed. As if you could borrow something from the dead. I called Bryson immediately, my fingers shaking as I dialed. He answered on the 4th ring, background noise suggesting he was at an airport. "Mom, what's up? We're about to board." "Where's your father's Rolex?" Silence stretched between us before Kendra's voice floated through, artificially sweet. "Oh, Marlene, we were going to tell you when we got back. We sold it to that nice pawn shop downtown. Got $1,200. Can you believe it?" $1,200. For a watch worth at least $30,000, carrying 43 years of marriage on its band. "You sold my husband's watch without asking me?" Bryson's voice hardened, taking on that tone he used when he thought I was being difficult. "Mom, be realistic. That watch was just sitting there collecting dust. Dad's been gone 8 months. Kendra and I needed this vacation. We've been under so much stress with the real estate market being what it is." Stress. My son, who drove a Tesla and lived in a house I'd helped him buy, was stressed. Meanwhile, I was stretching Garrett's pension to cover property taxes on a home that suddenly felt too big and too empty. "That watch belonged to your grandfather," I managed to say through the lump forming in my throat. "And now it belongs to someone who'll actually wear it," Kendra chirped. Honestly, Marlene, holding on to material possessions isn't healthy. You should try Marie Kondo. They hung up to catch their flight to Hawaii, leaving me standing in my kitchen with an empty watch box and a rage I hadn't felt since the oncologist told us Garrett had 3 months left, not the year we'd hoped for. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world, I bet you know this feeling. That moment when family shows you exactly where you rank in their priorities. Drop a comment below about where you're tuning in from, because stories like this, they're universal, aren't they? And if this resonates with you, that little thumbs up button helps more than you know. The pawn shop was called Emerald City Gold and Loans, tucked between a Vietnamese restaurant and a tax office on Rainier Avenue. The owner, Darius Washington, was waiting for me at the door. He was about 60, wearing a Navy veteran pin on his collar, with the kind of careful posture that suggested old injuries and older stories. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, leading me to a back office that smelled of gun oil and old leather. "Your husband came to see me 3 months before he passed." My breath caught. "Garrett was here?" Darius nodded, pulling out a manila envelope from a safe behind his desk. "He paid me $500 to watch for that specific Rolex. Said if it ever came in without you, I was to call immediately and secure certain items." He opened the envelope, revealing photocopies of documents and a small plastic bag containing what looked like a micro SD card and a folded piece of paper. "These were hidden in a compartment under the watch's caseback," Darius explained, his voice gentle. "Your husband showed me exactly where to look. He said you'd understand what MW1979C EMER 2402 means." I stared at the code written in Garrett's precise handwriting. MW1979 was obvious. Marlene Whitmore, 1979, the year we married. CA for Seattle. But EMER 402? Did my son know about this compartment? "No, ma'am. He was in a hurry. Kept checking his phone, said something about making a flight. His wife was outside taking selfies with the store sign." Darius's expression suggested what he thought of that. "But there's something else you should know. The man who bought the watch, he knew about the compartment." "What? Who bought it?" "Harrison Vale. Said he was a collector, but he asked specifically about any watches with the inscription G&M Forever on the back." "That's your watch, isn't it? Garrett and Marlene?" My mind raced. Harrison Vale. The name was familiar, tickling the edges of memory like a word you can't quite recall. "He paid cash, $4,000, way more than the watch was showing for. Your son didn't even negotiate, just took the $1,200 I offered and left." Darius pulled out a business card. "Mr. Vale left this for you, said you'd want it when you came looking." The card was expensive, heavy stock with raised lettering. Harrison Vale, Boeing aerospace engineer, retired. And then I remembered. Harrison had worked with Garrett for 20 years. They'd shared an office, collaborated on projects I never fully understood, something about aviation guidance systems. Why would he buy Garrett's watch? "There's a video file on that SD card," Darius said quietly. "Your husband made me promise not to watch it, but he said you'd need to see it soon. Maybe today's soon enough." I drove home with the SD card burning a hole in my purse, my mind spinning with questions. Garrett had been 3 steps ahead, somehow knowing Bryson would steal the watch. But how? And why hadn't he just told me? Back in my kitchen, I inserted the SD card into my laptop with trembling fingers. One video file appeared, dated 4 months before Garrett's death. I clicked play. Garrett's face filled the screen, thinner than I remembered, sitting in what looked like his home office after I'd gone to bed. His eyes, those green eyes that had watched me for 43 years, looked directly at the camera with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Marley," he began, using the nickname only he called me. "If you're watching this, then Bryson has done what I feared he would. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you in person, but I've made arrangements to protect you from beyond." He paused, rubbing his face in that familiar gesture he made when organizing difficult thoughts. 6 months ago, I overheard Bryson on the phone with Kendra. They were discussing what would happen to our assets when we died. Not if, Marley, when. Like they were planning for it. So I hired someone to look into our son's finances. The screen changed to show documents, bank statements, loan applications. Bryson owes $200,000, Marley. Failed cryptocurrency investments he never told us about. Kendra's lifestyle blog is hemorrhaging money. They've been living off credit cards and loans for 2 years, hoping we wouldn't notice. But that's not the worst part. Garrett reappeared on screen, his expression harder now. They've been meeting with lawyers about elder law, specifically about declaring elderly parents incompetent. Kendra researched memory care facilities that would give them power of attorney over our assets. Our son, Marley, has been planning to have us declared unfit to manage our own affairs. I had to pause the video, my chest tight with a pain that had nothing to do with my heart condition. Bryson, my firstborn, the boy I'd sung to sleep and taught to ride a bike, had been plotting against us like we were obstacles to overcome rather than parents to love. When I pressed play again, Garrett continued. I've moved most of our assets to protect you. The house is now in an irrevocable trust that Bryson can't touch. And there's an account, Marley. An offshore account I've been building for 30 years, starting with my father's life insurance that I never told anyone about. Not even you. And I'm sorry for that. But I knew if Bryson found out. He held up a piece of paper with numbers on it. EMER 2402 is the emergency account number. Sovereign Trust International in the Bahamas. I've been careful. Everything is legal, properly taxed. There's enough there to ensure you never have to depend on anyone, especially not our son. The video continued for another 10 minutes, Garrett explaining passwords, account details, contact information for lawyers he'd retained. He'd built an entire financial fortress around me without my knowledge, all while fighting cancer and pretending everything was normal. There's more evidence in my filing cabinet, Garrett said as the video neared its end. Bottom drawer, behind the tax returns. Phoenix Associates did the investigation. Everything Bryson and Kendra have planned is documented. Use it if you need to. And Marley? I asked Harrison to buy the watch if it ever showed up. He'll return it to you when the time is right. I love you, sweetheart. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a better son. But I can give you protection from the one we have. The screen went dark, and I sat in the silence of my kitchen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of Garrett's deception and protection in equal measure. My husband had spent his last months on Earth not just fighting cancer, but fighting our own son's greed. I found the Phoenix Associates folder exactly where Garrett said it would be. Inside were photographs, bank records, and most damning, transcripts of recorded conversations. Bryson discussing with someone named Rodrigo about accelerating the timeline. Kendra on the phone with her mother, saying, once we get power of attorney, we can sell the house and put her in one of those nice places. She won't know the difference soon enough. One report was dated just 2 weeks before Garrett's death. The investigator had tracked Bryson meeting with a loan shark in Tacoma, promising a large payment within the year. My parents are old, the transcript quoted him saying. It's just a matter of time. A matter of time. Like our deaths were items on his calendar, appointments to keep. My phone rang, startling me from the horror of what I was reading. Unknown number with a Seattle area code. Mrs. Whitmore, this is Harrison Vale. I believe Darius told you about me. You bought my husband's watch. I'm holding it for you, actually. Garrett asked me to buy it if it ever appeared without you. I've been checking pawn shops and estate sales for months. Your husband was very thorough in his preparations. Why didn't he tell me any of this? Harrison was quiet for a moment. He wanted to, but he was afraid you'd confront Bryson. Garrett knew you, Marlene. You always see the best in people, especially your children. He couldn't risk Bryson accelerating his plans if he knew Garrett was onto him. Accelerating his plans. The same phrase from the investigator's report. Harrison, how much did Garrett tell you? Everything. We spent lunches planning how to protect you. He even had me set up cameras in your house, if you can believe it. They're motion activated, hidden in the smoke detectors. He wanted evidence in case Bryson tried anything after he was gone. Cameras! My deceased husband had turned our home into a surveillance state to protect me from our own son. They're coming back from Hawaii tomorrow, I said, thinking out loud. Then perhaps it's time to activate Garrett's final contingency plan. Check your email, Marlene. Garrett scheduled a message to be sent to you 8 months after his death. It should have arrived this morning. I opened my laptop again, navigating to my email with fingers that had steadied with purpose. There it was, sent at 6 a.m. from Garrett's account. Subject line: Time to be brave, Marley. Inside were contact details for a lawyer named Natasha Romano and an FBI agent named David Park, who specialized in elder fraud. Both had been briefed on my situation months ago. Both were waiting for my call. To be continued. Word count, Part 1, 2,547 words. I realize I haven't reached the 4,000-word target for Part 1. Let me continue writing to complete the first part properly. The email from Garrett contained more than just contact information. There were detailed instructions, like a military operation planned with precision. He'd thought of everything, even suggesting what I should wear when the confrontation happened. Look strong, Marley. Wear the navy suit from our anniversary dinner. Show them the woman I fell in love with, not the grieving widow they expect to manipulate. I called Natasha Romano first. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional with a slight Boston accent. Mrs. Whitmore, I've been expecting your call. Garrett paid my retainer 8 months ago. I have everything ready to file the moment you give me the word. File what exactly? Restraining orders, fraud charges, elder abuse complaints. Your husband documented everything beautifully. We have enough evidence to put your son away for several years if we pursue criminal charges. But that's your decision to make. Criminal charges against my own son. How had it come to this? What would you recommend? That depends on what you want, Mrs. Whitmore. Do you want justice or do you want your son back? Can I have both? In my experience, rarely. Your son has crossed legal and moral lines that can't be uncrossed. The question is whether you want to hold him accountable or enable him to continue. I thought about Bryson as a child, how he'd bring me dandelions and call them flowers. When had that sweet boy become someone who planned his mother's institutionalization for money? I need to think about it. Of course. But Mrs. Whitmore, Garrett also wanted me to tell you about the house situation. Has Bryson mentioned anything about refinancing or home equity loans? My blood chilled. No, why? Because according to the documents Garrett provided, Bryson has been attempting to forge your signature on loan applications. He's been rejected so far, but he's getting more sophisticated. Your husband moved the house into an irrevocable trust just in time. Bryson can't touch it now, no matter what he tries. After hanging up with Natasha, I sat in Garrett's office, surrounded by evidence of my son's betrayal and my husband's protection. The portrait of our family from 10 years ago smiled down at me. Garrett, me, Bryson, and his sister Celeste. Celeste lived in Portland now, a successful pediatrician married to a wonderful man named James. She'd been distant from Bryson for years, and now I understood why. I called her, needing to hear the voice of the child who hadn't plotted against me. Mom! Celeste's voice was warm, concerned. How are you holding up? Did you know? I asked without preamble. About Bryson's plans? A long pause. Dad told me some of it. He made me promise not to interfere, said he had it handled. I wanted to warn you so many times, but Dad insisted his way was better. He didn't want you to have to choose between your children. So you've known for months that your brother was planning to destroy me? Mom, Bryson destroyed himself years ago? The gambling? The failed investments? The constant need for more? Kendra just made it worse. Did Dad tell you about the other women? What other women? Bryson's been having affairs. Multiple ones. Kendra knows, but stays because she thinks there's money coming. They're both vultures, Mom. I'm sorry, but it's true. I thought about Kendra's Instagram posts, the perfect couple facade she maintained while apparently knowing her husband was cheating. The layers of deception were staggering. Celeste, your father left evidence. Enough to send Bryson to prison. Good, she said firmly. Mom, he was going to put you in a memory care facility and claim you had dementia. He'd already picked one out in Spokane. Far enough that family wouldn't visit often. He was going to sell everything you and Dad built and leave you to die alone. He deserves whatever's coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, seeing Garrett everywhere. His reading glasses on the side table, his coffee mug in the kitchen, his slippers by the bed. He'd spent his last months not just saying goodbye to this life, but building a fortress to protect me after he left. The cameras Harrison mentioned were invisible, but knowing they were there made me feel less alone. Garrett was still watching over me, in a way. At 3 a.m., I made my decision. I pulled out Garrett's laptop and logged into the offshore account using the passwords he'd provided. The balance made me gasp. $3.2 million. Garrett had turned his father's modest life insurance into a fortune through careful investment over 30 years. All legal, all documented, all protected from Bryson's reach. I drafted an email to Natasha Romano. Proceed with everything. No mercy. Then I called David Park, the FBI agent. He answered despite the early hour. Mrs. Whitmore, Agent Park here. I've been monitoring your son's financial activities per your husband's request. He's scheduled to make a large payment to some unsavory people next week. If he can't make it, things could get dangerous for him. How large? $50,000. He's been promising them a big score, claims he's about to come into family money. My money. My husband's legacy. Bryson was so confident in his plan to rob me that he'd already spent the profits. What do you recommend, Agent Park? Let him come to you. When he returns from Hawaii, he'll be desperate. That's when people make mistakes. Your husband suggested we be ready to record everything. With your permission, I'd like to have agents nearby when he visits next. You have my permission. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done since Garrett's funeral. I put on makeup, styled my hair, and wore the navy suit he'd loved. If I was going to war with my son, I'd do it looking like the woman Garrett fell in love with, not the grieving widow Bryson expected to manipulate. The doorbell rang at noon. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, Harrison Vale stood there holding a familiar wooden box. I thought you might want this back, he said, handing me Garrett's watch. I had it serviced and polished. It's keeping perfect time. I opened the box with trembling hands. The Rolex gleamed, its weight familiar and comforting when I picked it up. Turning it over, I saw the inscription, G&M Forever. There's something else, Harrison said, pointing to a tiny mark I'd never noticed before. Garrett had me install a recording device in the watch 6 months ago. It's been recording everything within 10 feet since I bought it from the pawn shop. Your son's conversations, his wife's phone calls, everything. Is that legal? In Washington state, only one party needs to consent to recording. Since the watch technically belonged to Garrett's estate, and you're the executor, yes, it's legal. Garrett thought of everything. Harrison helped me extract the recordings from the watch. Hours of Bryson and Kendra's conversations, including one particularly damning discussion during their flight to Hawaii. Once we get power of attorney, We sell everything, Kendra's voice said clearly. The house alone is worth $2 million in this market. She won't last long in that facility, Bryson replied. Those places are depressing. Maybe 6 months, a year tops? Perfect. We'll be in Cabo by then. They were planning my death like a vacation schedule. The casual cruelty in their voices made me physically ill. I ran to the bathroom, gripping the porcelain sink as my stomach heaved. This wasn't just greed. It was calculated evil from the child I'd nursed through chickenpox, taught to tie his shoes, and cheered at every baseball game. Harrison waited patiently in the living room when I returned, his face etched with sympathy. There's more on the recording, but maybe you should wait. No, I need to hear it all. The next segment was from the pawn shop itself. Bryson haggling with Darius, lying about the watch being a cheap replica, claiming I'd given him permission to sell it. Then Kendra's voice, crystal clear. Just take the $1,200. Once we have power of attorney, we'll sell her real jewelry. The dementia story is already established with her neighbors. Established with my neighbors. I thought about Mrs. Patterson next door, how she'd been looking at me strangely lately, speaking slowly, like I might not understand. My own son had been poisoning my community against me while I grieved my husband. Garrett knew this would be the hardest part, Harrison said softly. Not the financial betrayal, but the personal one. He wanted me to give you this when you were ready. He handed me another envelope, this one marked, "For Marley's Rage, open when needed." Inside was a single paragraph in Garrett's shaky handwriting. My love, you're angry? Good. Use it. Rage is just love frustrated by injustice. Channel it into action. Protect yourself with the fury of a mother lion, even if it's from our own cub. I'm with you. My phone buzzed. A text from Bryson. Landing in an hour. Need to discuss Dad's estate. Important. I looked at Harrison. They're coming back. Then it's time. I'll call Agent Park and Natasha Romano. Celeste is already on her way from Portland. She took the red-eye. Celeste is coming? Garrett arranged it all, Marlene. She's been waiting for your call. She has evidence, too. Recordings of Bryson asking her to support the incompetency claim, trying to bribe her with a bigger inheritance share. While Harrison made calls, I prepared for war. I put on the navy suit Garrett had loved, pinned my hair the way I wore it to board meetings during my banking career, and applied the red lipstick I'd abandoned after retirement. In the mirror, I saw not a grieving widow, but the woman who'd risen from teller to regional manager, who'd raised 2 children while earning her MBA at night, who'd supported Garrett through 3 decades at Boeing. The doorbell rang at 2 p.m. sharp. Through the peephole, I saw not just Bryson and Kendra, but a woman I didn't recognize, mid-50s with a practiced smile and a leather portfolio. Mom! Bryson called out, walking in without waiting for an invitation. This is Dr. Patricia Helm. She specializes in geriatric psychology. They'd brought an ambush specialist, but they didn't know about my own ambush waiting in the wings. Dr. Helm? I said pleasantly, noting the woman's discomfort at entering without permission. I don't recall scheduling an appointment. This is more of an informal assessment, she said carefully. Your family has concerns? My family, I interrupted, consists of more than the son trying to rob me and his accomplice wife. My daughter Celeste, for instance, who's a pediatrician at Oregon Health and Science University. Perhaps you'd like to wait for her? She'll be here any moment. Bryson's face darkened. Celeste has nothing to do with this. Oh, but she does. The voice came from behind them. My daughter stood in the doorway, professional in her white coat, having come straight from the airport. Hello, Dr. Helm. I'm Dr. Celeste Liu, and I have serious concerns about your ethical standards if you're conducting assessments without proper authorization. Dr. Helm immediately began backing toward the door. I was told this was a family intervention with consent. Whose consent? Celeste demanded. Because my mother seems quite surprised by your presence. Are you aware that conducting psychological assessments under false pretenses can result in license revocation? The psychologist fled, muttering about misunderstandings and scheduling conflicts. Celeste, you're ruining everything! Kendra shrieked, her composure finally cracking. No, Kendra. You two ruined everything when you decided my mother's life was worth less than your credit card debt. Bryson tried to salvage the situation. Mom, you're clearly being manipulated. First Dad with his paranoid recordings, now Celeste. Paranoid? I pulled out my phone, playing the recording from the plane. Their own voices filled the room, discussing my planned demise, the facility in Spokane, their confidence that I wouldn't last 6 months. Kendra went pale. You bugged us? No, the watch you sold for vacation money was recording everything. Dad knew you'd steal it. He counted on your greed. That's illegal, Bryson sputtered. Actually, it's not, Agent David Park said, entering with 2 other FBI agents. I hadn't heard them come in, but Harrison had given them a key. Washington is a 2-party consent state, but the watch belonged to the estate, and Mrs. Whitmore is the executor. Legally, she consented to the recording. Who the hell are you? Agent Park, FBI. We've been investigating you for wire fraud, Mr. Whitmore. Your recent loan applications with forged signatures triggered federal banking alerts. Bryson looked between the agents, his sister and me, reality finally dawning. Mom, you called the FBI on your own son? No, Bryson. Your father did, months before he died. He knew what you were becoming and tried to protect me. All I did was activate the plan he left behind. Agent Park stepped forward. Bryson Whitmore, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. This is insane! I want a lawyer! You'll have one, Agent Park said, cuffing him with practiced efficiency. Mrs. Kendra Whitmore, you're also under arrest for conspiracy charges. Kendra tried to run, but an agent blocked the door. Her Instagram-perfect persona shattered completely as she screamed obscenities, blaming everyone but herself. The neighbors would have quite a show to discuss, though I found I no longer cared what they thought. As they led my son away, he turned back one last time. I'm your son. Your blood. How could you choose Dad's money over me? I didn't choose money over you, Bryson. I chose dignity over degradation, truth over lies, and justice over enabling your cruelty. Your father saw what you'd become and loved me enough to protect me from it. The house fell silent after the FBI left. Celeste, Harrison, and I sat in the kitchen, the weight of what had just happened settling over us like a heavy blanket. He wasn't always like this, I said quietly, more to myself than them. Celeste took my hand. I know, Mom. I remember the brother who shared his Halloween candy, who taught me to ride a bike. But that person chose to disappear, replaced by someone who saw family as a resource to exploit. Harrison stood to leave, but paused at the door. Garrett wanted you to know something else. The account in the Bahamas? He named it the Phoenix Fund. He said you'd understand. I did understand. The phoenix rises from ashes, renewed and stronger. Garrett had ensured I could rise from the ashes of betrayal. That evening, Natasha Romano called with updates. Bryson and Kendra had been denied bail due to flight risk. Apparently, Kendra had researched countries without extradition treaties. The federal prosecutor was confident about conviction, especially with Garrett's extensive documentation. Your husband built an airtight case, Natasha said with admiration. I've never seen anything like it. Every document authenticated, every recording legally obtained, every piece of evidence properly preserved. He must have spent hundreds of hours preparing this. Hundreds of hours while dying of cancer, using his last months not for bucket lists or goodbye tours, but for protecting me from our own son. 3 days later, I visited the safety deposit box Garrett's second note had revealed. Inside were more surprises, photos of Bryson as a child, report cards showing straight A's, Father's Day cards with crayon hearts. Garrett had separated the memory of who Bryson was from the reality of who he'd become, preserving the good while preparing for the bad. There was also a USB drive labeled, "For Marley, the truth about everything." At home, I plugged it in to find dozens of video files, date-stamped over the last year of Garrett's life. I clicked on the first one. Garrett appeared, healthier than in his final message, sitting in his office at Boeing during lunch break. "Marley, I'm starting this video diary because I need you to understand everything when the time comes. Today, I discovered Bryson has been stealing from us. Small amounts from our joint account, but it's escalating. I confronted him, and he laughed. Said we had plenty and wouldn't miss it. When I told him it was wrong, he said I was being dramatic. Our son feels entitled to what we've earned. That's when I knew I had to protect you." Video after video documented Garrett's investigation into Bryson's activities, his meetings with lawyers and investigators, his growing horror at discovering the depth of our son's moral decay. In one particularly painful entry, Garrett broke down crying. "I found out about the affairs today. Multiple women. Kendra knows, but stays for the money she thinks we have. They're both so broken, Marley. Where did we go wrong? How did we raise someone capable of such cruelty?" But in the final video, recorded just a week before his death, Garrett had found peace. "I've done everything I can, my love. The money is protected, the evidence is gathered, the authorities are briefed. I wish I could be there to shield you from this pain, but I trust you to be strong. You always have been. And remember, Bryson's choices aren't your failure. Some people choose darkness despite being shown nothing but light. Protect yourself, my darling. Live well. That's the best revenge against those who wished you harm." 2 weeks after the arrests, I received a call from the Federal Detention Center. Against my better judgment, I accepted it. "Mom?" Bryson's voice was different, smaller, scared. "I'm sorry." "For getting caught?" "No, for everything. They showed me Dad's evidence, all of it. I saw the videos he made, heard the pain in his voice when he talked about what I'd become. I broke his heart before cancer ever touched him, didn't I?" "Yes," I said simply. There was no point in lying. "The other inmates here, they hate people who hurt their parents. I'm in protective custody because of it. Ironic, right? I need protection because I tried to hurt the person who protected me my whole life." "What do you want, Bryson?" "Nothing. I just wanted you to know that I'm starting to understand what I threw away. Kendra's already filed for divorce, took a plea deal to testify against me. She's getting 18 months. I'm looking at 3 to 5 years. Your father arranged for you to receive money for commissary, $1,000 a month, even after everything. He made sure you'd be okay." Bryson was quiet for so long, I thought the call had disconnected. Then, through tears, "I didn't deserve him. I don't deserve you." "No," I agreed. "You don't. But that's what love is, Bryson. Giving people more than they deserve, and hoping they'll rise to match it. Your father believed you might remember who you used to be, given time and distance from the life you built. Do you think I can?" "I don't know. That's up to you." 6 months later, I stood in the Garrett Whitmore Cancer Treatment Wing at Seattle Children's Hospital, watching the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The $1 million donation had created a state-of-the-art facility that would serve families for generations. Celeste stood beside me with her husband James and their twin daughters, Sophie and Emma. "Grandma Marlene." Sophie tugged at my sleeve. "Was Grandpa really smart like everyone says?" I touched the Rolex on my wrist, feeling its steady pulse. "Your grandfather was brilliant, sweetheart, but more than that, he was wise. He knew that love sometimes means protecting people from those who would hurt them, even when it's family." Dr. Sarah Chen, the oncology director, approached with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Whitmore, this equipment will save hundreds of children. Your husband's name will be blessed by families for decades." As we toured the facility, my phone buzzed with an email from Bryson. He was allowed limited computer access for educational programs and had started taking online courses in accounting, legitimate accounting. "Mom, I'm learning what Dad tried to teach me about honest work and earned success. It's harder than stealing, but it feels better. I'm teaching literacy to other inmates too." Trying to give back something positive. I know it doesn't erase what I did, but I wanted you to know I'm trying. Dad would probably laugh at me finally learning accounting in federal prison, but maybe that's what I needed, to lose everything to understand what actually has value. I showed the email to Celeste, who read it with skepticism. "He could be manipulating you again." "Maybe, but your father left the door open for redemption. I won't walk through it blindly, but I won't nail it shut either." That evening, I sat on my deck overlooking Puget Sound, the sunset painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The house felt peaceful now, free from the undercurrent of greed and deception that had poisoned it for years. Mrs. Patterson from next door had apologized profusely after learning the truth, bringing casseroles and shame in equal measure. The Rolex caught the dying light, its face reflecting the sky's glory. I thought about Garrett, how he'd spent his last year not traveling or checking off bucket list items, but meticulously building a fortress around me. Some might call it paranoid or controlling. I called it love in its purest form, protective, prescient, and powerful enough to reach beyond death itself. A year passed. Bryson served his time quietly, earning certifications in accounting and financial planning. His letters came monthly, never asking for money or favors, just sharing his progress and memories of better times. Kendra had fled to Costa Rica after her release, finding a new target to fund her lifestyle. The divorce had been finalized without contest. I started a foundation called Phoenix Rising for families dealing with elder abuse, using Garrett's investigative template to help others protect vulnerable seniors. Harrison Vale joined the board, along with 3 other Boeing retirees who'd experienced similar betrayals. We'd helped 17 families in our first year, preventing millions in theft and countless broken hearts. The watch still sits on my wrist, wound each morning with the same reverence Garrett showed it. Sometimes I open both hidden compartments just to see his handwriting, to remember that love isn't always soft and yielding. Sometimes it's strategic and protective, building walls against future storms while leaving windows open for redemption's possibility. Bryson will be released next year. He's asked to work for the foundation, helping families recognize the warning signs he exhibited. It's a bold request from someone who caused such pain, but I remember the boy who brought me dandelions, who cried when his goldfish died, who wrote "I love you, Mom" in sidewalk chalk every Mother's Day. Garrett believed in second chances, even from beyond the grave. The door he left cracked open remains that way, not wide enough for trust to walk through freely, but sufficient for hope to squeeze past. The watch keeps ticking, marking time between betrayal and possible redemption, between the family we were and the family we might yet become. In its steady rhythm, I hear Garrett's voice, carried on the wind off Puget Sound. Protect what matters, forgive when possible, but never forget that love's greatest gift is sometimes the shield it provides against those who would do us harm. The Rolex will outlive me, as it outlived Garrett. Someday, I'll pass it to Celeste, along with the story of how a dying man's love protected his wife from their own son's greed. But for now, it remains on my wrist. A reminder that true love transcends death, that protection can be planned, and that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property, but the foresight to see danger coming and the courage to stop it. 2 years later, on a gray Seattle morning that threatened rain, I stood outside the Federal Detention Center. Bryson emerged carrying a single bag, his frame thinner, his hair showing gray at the temples. Prison had aged him, but his eyes held something they'd lacked before: humility. "Hi, Mom," he said simply, not moving toward me, waiting for permission to approach. "Hello, Bryson." We stood there, two strangers who shared DNA and decades of history, measuring the distance between us. Finally, I stepped forward and hugged my son. He broke down completely, sobbing apologies into my shoulder like the child he'd once been. "I don't expect forgiveness," he whispered. "I just want a chance to earn back even a fragment of your trust." "Trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets," I quoted Garrett's favorite saying. "Start with drops." Bryson now works for Phoenix Rising, teaching families to recognize financial exploitation warning signs. He lives in a small apartment, drives a used Honda, and sends every extra penny to victims of elder abuse. He's never asked about the offshore account, never mentioned inheritance. When he visits monthly, he brings groceries and helps with yard work, asking nothing in return. Kendra sent a message through Instagram last month, broke again, hinting at reconciliation. Bryson blocked her without responding. "Some bridges," he told me, "should stay burned." Last week, we visited Garrett's grave together for the first time since the funeral. Bryson placed a white rose on the headstone and spoke quietly. "Dad, I became everything you feared I would be, but I'm trying to become someone you wouldn't be ashamed of. Thank you for protecting Mom when I became the threat." The Rolex on my wrist caught the cemetery's morning light as we walked back to the car. Its steady ticking reminded me that time doesn't heal all wounds, but it does clarify which ones are worth healing. Garrett's greatest gift wasn't the money he protected or the evidence he gathered. It was showing me that love sometimes means building walls against our own blood. As Bryson drove me home, he glanced at the watch. "Dad always said that watch kept perfect time." "It does," I replied. "It keeps time with what truly matters: love that protects, wisdom that prepares, and hope that even the lost can sometimes find their way home." The watch will outlive us all. Its hidden compartments holding secrets of a love so fierce, it reached beyond death to protect what mattered most. And in its endless ticking, I hear Garrett's final message. Sometimes the greatest love story isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to shield those we love from the people they've become, while leaving just enough light for them to find their way back to who they used to be.